The NWSL has reached its June break, and I want to talk about all of the things that have surprised me with a twisty, turny, parody-rich start to the season with 2 expansion sides. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of The Late Sub presented by Ally Bank. I am your host, Claire Watkins. It is Wednesday, June 3rd, and we're going to put a little bow on this first quasi-half-ish start to the NWSL season, where we have seen teams rise, we've seen teams fall, we've seen many arcs of rising and falling, even just over the course of 12 or 13 games, some individual standouts, and just why I'm excited and really enjoying this season as much as I have, despite always being a little bit worried about what competition is going to look like in an expansion year. But first, a quick order of business. The one NWSL competitive game being played in the month of June is the Challenge Cup in Columbus, Ohio, at the end of the month between Kansas City and Gotham. And I am going to be there. I'm hosting a Just Women's Sports Trivia Night presented by our friends Ally Bank on Thursday, June 25th to kick things off. I love Columbus. I really enjoy the Challenge Cup. I think this is going to be a great game. And our event is going to be soccer, drinks, prizes, and maybe a special guest. Tickets are live, so if you're planning your trip or you live in Columbus, click the link in the episode bio. I hope to see you there. Before all of that, let's talk about the first couple of weeks of this NWSL season. So the NWSL has hit its June break. School is out for the summer for just 1 month due to some of the, a variety of reasons. They tend to take these summer breaks anymore, but also just sort of the infrastructural necessities of the Men's World Cup taking place in the United States this month, which is exciting. Excited for some good men's footy, but it does mean that the NWSL is taking a little bit of time off, which means if you're an NWSL club, if you haven't gotten your act together, you're going to have to sit and think about your choices for the next month. And if you've done well, you're going to have to try to keep the momentum going despite a little bit of a long break. So just kind of a snapshot of where we're at. I'm not going to list like every single team, but a snapshot of the big picture. San Diego, maybe not a surprise. We were very high on San Diego going into this year. They lead the league in points going into the break with only 1 loss in their last 5 games. And not for nothing, though, they have played 1 or 2 more games than most other teams in the league. This is not a balanced schedule at this juncture. A couple teams have played 13 games. Most teams have played 12 games. And a couple teams, due to some of their CONCACAF requirements, have only played 11 games. So San Diego in front. A couple teams behind them have a game in hand, which I think is all the spicier. And the standings are still, despite all of that, pretty tight. Only 4 points separate places 1 through 6, 6th being held by the Kansas City Current. And only 6 points separate 6th and 9th, which is currently held by the Denver Summit, who are only, I think, 2 points off of that playoff line. So things are still really, really tight in the table. It's been a pretty parity-rich season, though, thus far, with some surprises. And that's why I want to dig into basically all of those things that have surprised me so far in the NWSL season in 2026. We knew it was going to be competitive. We maybe didn't know how competitive. I think if you go back to some of the preview work that we did, there were question marks of some of these teams that did so well last year, maybe coming down to earth a little bit. We always have these first kind of 8 weeks or so of the season where teams are figuring themselves and each other out. Those are always very close. We might see some more separation in the second half of the year, but what I like is we've got some teams that we expected rising to the top, but maybe in interesting ways. We've got more than one Cinderella bid. We've got some teams scrapping for playoff spots that we weren't sure that they'd be able to. And I think that all of that concoction creates an incredible NWSL season. So again, in lieu of hitting every single storyline going into the break, I want to point out all of the things that have specifically surprised me. To take stock in an NWSL season full of already some twists and turns. And the big headline, and I'm probably not the only person who's been talking about this. We've been talking about this for a couple weeks now because it just won't go away. The big storyline so far in the NWSL are the Utah Royals, just as a whole. No one thought Utah would be in second place going into the June break. I don't think anyone predicted that. If they did, you can come and tell me. And they're not just strength of schedule merchants. That's kind of how it started for me a little bit. I was like looking at the teams they were playing, and I was like, okay, this team hasn't figured this out. This team's kind of injured, going through, and then they keep winning, and they keep winning, and they keep winning, and those wins get better and better quality results. And you start to go like, oh, this is not about who they're playing. This is about the way that they are playing. And they, again, have a game in hand as compared to the 2 teams flanking them in the standings in San Diego in front of them and Portland behind them. Utah trails only Washington so far in goal differential. They create waves of attack that teams really struggle to contain, with an emphasis on creating numbers mismatches going forward. And they have this level of tactical flexibility that can be perceived as all attack all the time. But they also have been pretty sturdy in their defense as well. They've got a couple players in that back line and obviously some very good goalkeeping to rely on. They've already outpaced their wins from last year. They've matched their win total from 2024. It's a pretty remarkable turnaround for a franchise that finished 12th last year and upon their return to the NWSL has never made the playoffs. Now, we talked about Utah going into this season as a team that finishes seasons well. They start to build some momentum, then they drop off at the beginning of the season. They build momentum, and then they drop off at the beginning of the season. That did not happen this time. This is the first time we've seen the team start to build year over year into something with a really clear identity. They play fast and athletic soccer, for sure, but they're not wholly dependent on the counterattack, which is nice. That is a very difficult way to sustain a whole season, especially in their most recent draw with Portland, which we saw last weekend. That was that top-of-the-table clash. It ends 2-2. Utah lightly outpossessed the Thorns. They carried a high line that limited their opponents in space, where Portland actually found themselves dropping back a lot more. Utah really forced the line of contention, which is exactly what they want to do. Again, it's that high protagonist soccer that I love so much. They trust each other on the ball. And they're also committed, and their head coach, Jimmy Conrads, talks about this frequently, to full team defense, which makes them very hard, alternatively, to play against. That part is a pretty punishing way to craft a whole season. And we've seen that with teams who are really good at that sort of unique off-ball structure, and then they start to fade. But what I like about Utah, kind of to that point, is that they're not relying completely off-ball. They're not trying to sit back and absorb and then counter. They are trying to hold the ball as much as possible. They want to possess through that midfield. They want to create, again, these mismatches, these overlaps going forward through their tactical movement. And that is the secret to sustaining this for an entire season. To, yes, God forbid, be in a shield race. And so while I do think Utah will be happy for the break, I think so much of that ability also to avoid a harsh plateau. I like the style, like I said. They actually are kind of an analog to San Diego for me, which I find very, very interesting. We always are lauding San Diego's purposeful possession, and I think Utah definitely fits in that bucket right now. But a lot of the times, to be completely frank, what carries you through in the second half of a pretty punishing NWSL season is your roster. You need to have depth. You need to be ready for injuries. You need to be ready for absences. You need to be able to rely on these players to, again, to hold the ball, to play in a style that isn't so physically punishing. And I think if you look at that Utah roster, certainly that starting 11, but also who they have coming off the bench, I think those talent touch points also make me believe that they can keep the results going. I don't think we're looking at a Utah team individually that is completely like overplaying what you consider the baseline talent level. I think they're actually playing to it, right? We see Mina Tanaka and Chloe Lacasse get a lot of the headlines, as well they should. That's their dynamic duo. But we've seen, Kiana Palacios was very good in attack this last weekend. She's been a nice addition for them in sort of that striker role, that poacher role. You've got Keely Reel and Kate Del Fava. That center back pairing is really sturdy and getting sturdier by the week, it feels like. Like I said, they've got two good goalkeepers. Not for nothing that when Mandy McGlynn got hurt, Mia Justice was able to step in and do such a nice job. Now McGlynn is back. That's a really important asset when you're trying to, again, carry this over an entire season. We know Paige Cronin is so good when she's healthy. There's a well-balanced style of play and a well-balanced roster to create that style of play. And that excites me for Utah, because we're going to talk about this later in this episode. So often you see these teams try to make this jump in quality, this jump in consistency, and they can do it for about 6 to 8 games. And then the wheels start to fall off again. And the idea that Utah not only is playing the right style, but they have the right team and they're being managed the right way to do this for the long haul, I want to see that, because that's an NWSL success story that I'm excited about. I can't see into the future. Maybe the goals start drying up across the board in the NWSL in general. That does tend to happen. It's been a very goal-rich start, which is very fun. A lot of attack. That tends to slow down once you get the dog days of summer, July and August. But Utah, at the very least, looks like a very fun addition to the playoff picture, and they are certainly not a team I would want to play in the postseason. So moving on to my next surprise. Speaking of the postseason, let's talk about the postseason dominators, the postseason wrecking ball, Gotham. I want to talk about Gotham's defense for a second, because we know that Gotham's defense is really, really good, but they have been exceptional to start this NWSL season. We know that they're a highly defensive, low-margin soccer team. We've documented this trend for years. Earlier this season, I was talking about how it was driving me crazy. Last year, I was talking about how it was driving me crazy. But sometimes you just have to tip your cap to the masterclass, right? And their back line has been impossible to break down, even from what we've come to expect from that Bats back line. They've only allowed 5 goals so far this season. Pretty incredible. 4 better than the next best team. Their defense, plus Ann-Katrin Berger, has kind of further locked down that ethos again that made them champions in 2025. Now, AKB, this is a good example of a team that's doing well, but happy for the break. As we know, she suffered an abdomen injury in CONCACAF W Champions Cup play 2 weeks ago, and she will be very happy, I think, to have this break to start feeling a little bit better. That was an unfortunate rundown in Mexico for Gotham. They're going to want to put that behind them for sure. But in that idea, that context, that defense wins championships and at least keeps you consistent enough to always have a chance, Gotham has to feel good, and actually probably better than they were around this time last year. Hopefully they don't go on a skid post break. But it was around this time that Gotham kind of got their act together, and the fact that they're already looking so good on defense, I think, is exciting for them. And I've also been impressed with how Gotham has been able to rotate in a fashion with that back line depending on availability. You know, Emily Sonnet has not been in every single starting 11 for them this year. The return of Tierna Davidson has been a great success for them. She has not missed a beat, even giving further hope that she could have a big impact on the international level for the next few years. I mean, one of the really interesting things about Tierna Davidson is she's had multiple catastrophic injuries, as we know, and she has had multiple periods of time where she's been out. But she has never been a player upon her return that has ever looked diminished, which is so valuable. Every time she comes back, it's exactly the same. The exact same Tierna Davidson that you've been expecting this whole time, which is such a testament to what's probably happening between the ears for her, but also just her injury recovery where, yes, she's out for a long time, but she always comes back and looks better than ever. Very impressive to me. And they have these players at Gotham, Davidson, Sonnet, Jess Carter. They know how to clamp down space for opposing teams, very comfortable in possession. As we know, they don't get rattled if it takes a little bit for their attack to get going. And the team, not for nothing, has had players really give it a go at outside back because they've been dealing with a lot of injuries there as well. We've seen good stuff from Lily Reel. We've seen like different combinations, but you've seen Mitch Purse back there. You've seen Guru Riotin back there. It's been a whole team effort. And as of right now, it's working. Gotham still isn't letting the offense sing, I think, as much as anyone would like. So we're all waiting for. But if you're waiting for their foundation to go away, you're going to be waiting for a long time. I think this is kind of the really interesting natural push-pull of the way Juan Carlos Amoros likes to run this team, is you're always waiting for like the training wheels to come off, but then they're so consistent that you're like, I don't know, maybe there's something to be said for the training wheels. And that's what I'm seeing from Gotham's defense. Plus, again, some really, really nice individual performances and an incredible return from Davidson. Speaking of another defense that has surprised me in a very different way, not in a bad way, but in a little bit of a different way, very impressed with how Portland's defense has refused to break. This defensive highlight, very different than Gotham's. I am impressed, genuinely, by Portland's ability to not give up the game. More than they actually like smother the other team. You're never going to get that from Portland, not with this structure, probably not with this manager. And it's giving their attack, which has been so good, the ability to earn them results. They've done enough to keep the Thorns in third place. If you go back to kind of my preview for the Thorns, I had them in this like fun but wacky, it's going to be end to end. There's probably not going to be a ton of control category going into this season. And that has kind of played out, but at a higher level, I think, even than I was expecting starting out. The defense has been just enough better than these incoming estimates of sort of where they were going to be to have them firmly in the Shield race. Still a little sketchy at times, as we've seen. It's very interesting, I think, that starting goalkeeper Mackenzie Arnold is second in the league in saves. She's kind of been like leapfrogging. I think Jane Campbell is right there with her. So like they've been going back and forth. She's definitely earned her extension from Portland this season after sometimes, frankly, looking like a weak link at times last year. This is a bend but don't break operation. But like I said, they've been holding teams off enough to give their attack a chance. And their attack has been exceptional. And they do need, I mean, we talked about this a couple weeks ago with Mallory Swanson in Chicago. What you need from a defense, that if you're playing wide open soccer and you're going to score a lot of goals and you might concede a lot of goals, you just need your defense to do their jobs in a fashion so that your attack is focused on attacking and not having to muddy their brains trying to make up for stop gaps because you're constantly trying to last-ditch defend. And that's why we're seeing Olivia Moultrie and Sophia Wilson and Pietra Torden and Raylan Turner and all of these players focusing on what they do best. And that is a testament, genuinely, to Portland's back line. Does it always look great? Not always. Like, you could look at Utah last week, that 2-2 draw. The Royals had the better of the Thorns for a lot of that match. They were living kind of in Portland's defensive third. Like I said, very effective high line from Utah in that game. But that 1v1 last-ditch defending has been strong from a unit that got exploited a lot more last season. Question for the end of the break, does it wear off, right? Hard to say. Offense is still probably Portland's best defense. You score more than them and make the other team have to work a little bit harder. But as we've seen with teams further down in the standings, like I said, sort of that opposite of some of the troubles we see for a team like Chicago or Boston or anything like that, you do need to form a unit. And the best thing you can do as a defense, even if you are kind of playing that bend but don't break, is, like I said, you got to let the attack do their jobs. They cannot try to do multiple jobs for you, and we are seeing that in spades in Portland. Moving on to some surprises at the individual level, this brings us to this week's segment, Rookie of the Year Watch. This segment is brought to you by our partner, Ally Bank. Ally is dedicated to making it easier to be a women's sports fan, starting with providing the tools you need to spend and save. Ally Bank, member FDIC. Next surprise, my tagline here is the college to NWSL pipeline isn't dead yet. We are now multiple years into an NWSL ecosystem that allows teenagers, as we know, to sign directly with professional clubs without having to go through the college system. And we're now 2 years removed from the abolishment of the NWSL college draft. And as we know, that raised some alarm bells for people who are invested in the traditional talent pipelines, who understand that diversity is strength in terms of different options that players have. But also, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. The college system has provided incredible players for decades in women's soccer in the United States. And after a year of, again, perhaps slightly a less linear understanding of where exactly an established college senior or junior, for example, fits into an NWSL club's ecosystem, we are now seeing some very clear frontrunners for Rookie of the Year in 2026 be products of that exact pipeline. I support completely players having the option to go pro whenever they and the team they're negotiating with feels ready for them to do so. I think that's been good for the sport. But the developmental journey of an NCAA player is also really important to the growth of the game in the United States. And we have seen stories of players getting signed really young and then not becoming a core player to a team. I think a really good example is Chloe Ricketts, who got signed by Washington directly at the age of 15. She's now with Boston. Her career is not over by any stretch of the imagination, but that just didn't go exactly the way that she expected it to. And that is some of the dangers of signing with a team so young. You're really placing your career in the hands of a professional team who do have kind of this bottom line that they have to keep pushing forward. So it's been nice to see some of these players who cut their teeth in college walk into the NWSL and do so well, and shows that the college pipeline, especially with some of these blue chip programs that we're going to mention, still has a ton of value. These are names we've said before, right? Gotham forward Jordan Dudley has 2 goals and 2 assists on the season thus far. She's carried a significant amount of responsibility as the Bats continue to develop scoring by committee. For all of Gotham's veteran presence, I really like the way that they trust rookies. We've seen it year after year after year. Dudley is coming from a really established long line of that. She came to the NWSL from Florida State, where she won 2 national championships before forgoing her senior year of eligibility. Her college teammate, San Diego outside back, Mimi Van Zanten, similar story, played for Florida State, 2 natties in 3 years before jumping to the pros, signed with the Wave. As they continue to invest in young talent, they have also had some players come in that have since been sent out. They don't always keep every single young player that they sign, but they've got a really nice young core, and Van Zanten has been one of their more consistent starters as they sit atop of the table. Her teammate, San Diego forward Leah Godfrey, has had a ridiculous start, scoring 4 goals with 3 assists as the Wave again sit atop the NWSL table, and she played for the University of Virginia for 6 years. This is about as NCAA success as it gets. A player that developed. She was always a good young prospect, but she had to deal with the COVID year. She had to deal with a redshirt injury year. She used all of those eligibility mechanisms to stay in college for as long as she was comfortable, and she has entered the NWSL completely ready for the professional speed of play. That's a college success story. It's good, like I said, for women's soccer in the U.S. that players have a chance to become who they are still as young talents before the harsh spotlight of the professional game. And I think it's also good that players don't have to go through narrow pipelines either. And I think if Rookie of the Year consistently continues to come from the college game, which it has, some of that is due to the necessities of the rules, where someone like Claudia Martinez, for example, who has been wonderful for Washington, is not eligible because she actually went pro as a teenager in a different league. I think that maybe, people are going to keep investing in those players coming up from those programs. We're going to see signings, and I think that that is good for the college game as well. Good for the NWSL, Good for college. And Ally Bank is doubling down on keeping fans close to the game they love with inside access to the NWSL, including our Rookie of the Year watch. Learn more at ally.com. Ally Bank, member FDIC. Being a women's sports fan can add up quickly. From tickets, your game day fit, tailgating, getting to the game, Ally Bank gets that. Ally is dedicated to making it easier to be a women's sports fan. With Ally's accounts, you save automatically while you spend. That way, you don't have to miss the next big rivalry game and can focus on what matters to you. Learn more at ally.com. Ally Bank, member FDIC. So if that's the rookies, if that's kind of the big takeaway on the rookies, let's switch it over to MVP race here, because there are fewer actually. So I'm talking about sort of these established pipelines, new faces, fresh faces, but there are fewer new faces perhaps in the MVP race than I maybe expected. I had a couple, bold predictions for 2026, and I wanted to see some mixing up of maybe some of these returns for U.S. players being in the mix, and we're going to see that. But if I had to create an MVP ballot right now of my finalists, a lot of the names on it would be very known to anyone who followed the MVP races over the last 2 years. Barbara Banda, clearly out in front. I said this a couple weeks ago. I'll say it again. Barbara Banda, as of right now, is absolutely far and away the front runner for NWSL MVP this year. But two-time winner Tierna Chawinga coming on strong. She's looked a lot better as she's come back from injury. Manaka Matsukubo has only grown in her prowess as North Carolina has put her closer to goal. I'm enjoying actually the way North Carolina's kind of new leadership is converting some of these really talented on-ball players into this really cohesive attack. These are names, though, that we know really well. These are like MVP finalists from the last couple of years, right? And I do worry sometimes, like in an inside baseball sort of way, that the names we consider as top of the line in the NWSL can come from too narrow of a lens. And I think we're going to have to, for me as media, keep really working on that as the league continues to expand and there are simply more people in the league and more teams to follow. But I also really enjoy how we've gotten these multi-year arcs from some of the best in the game. Not to say that there are no other players coming on strong, right? Ashley Sanchez has been incredible, as we know. Sophia Wilson really is getting better every single week. Like, it's not just the goals. She should be in the mix if she keeps delivering for Portland. Her return has been everything anyone could have hoped for, and now it's just about landing the plane in the second half of the season. We've even started to see kind of as team fortunes change, we're seeing some new names emerge. Croy Bethune has been getting more and more comfortable in Kansas City as they stabilize as a whole team. She has started rising the ranks of what you're starting to see of like these underlying playmaking stats. She's doing really well. I think, again, if Rose Lavelle can get healthy, there's something there. The only knock on San Diego's talent is there's so many of them. I think you could argue for a variety of different players. The Dudinha, I think, would be a great, certainly Defender of the Year player, someone who could be in that MVP race conversation. The San Diego rookies, as mentioned, Trinity Rodman has been very effective. It's a quality mix. But I guess after a year, after there was a lot of hand-wringing over the league's star power, I think the first almost half of the season or so has sort of locked into place exactly who this league's stars are, rather than worrying about who they are not. Those stars are Barbara Banda, Tierna Chawinga, Manaka Matsukubo. These are the players that have delivered year after year after year, and they're not slowing down. And we're going to look back on this era and almost wish we had appreciated that more. And then the fun kind of caveat for this year is there's like now this wealth of U.S. talent chasing them as the world game turns towards a World Cup next year, which is, again, you love it or hate it. That's when the U.S. players really, they turn and burn the closer you get to a World Cup. So I like that dynamic. But of all the positives, I guess, and all of these top performers, whether it's teams, players, rookies, vets, whatever, not everything is sharpening. So to close here, we're going to close here on a little bit of a more muted note, I guess. These kinds of like not so surprising surprises, these surprises that are maybe a little bit more disappointing, talking about some teams at the bottom of the table, which is the teams that historically had issues fading are fading again. And those are the teams that to probably have a truly miraculous or remarkable NWSL season, you want these teams in the mix too, and not just in the first 8 games of the year. Racing Louisville right now is sitting at the bottom of the table. I didn't see them struggling just this much on my list of expectations. It's a little surprising the way the wheels are starting to fall off in terms of results in Louisville, considering head coach Bev Yanez won Coach of the Year just last year after leading the club to their first ever playoff appearance. They haven't really changed the way that they play. Maybe it shows the limitations of that style. Like I said, it's very physically grueling. It's kind of more antagonist soccer versus protagonist soccer, which just takes more energy. And there hasn't necessarily been further investment in a roster that can handle it. Now, they've still got some great individual players in Louisville. I've talked about what I think, Taylor Flint is doing is great. I think Emma Sears has been very good. But it's just not holding together as a unit the way it was last year. And the sad thing about that is wondering if that was inevitable. Similarly to Angel City and Houston falling off of their fast starts, right? They started out so well. Angel City always has this tendency to start strong. And they've got these players, and you're like, this is the moment that they're all going to come and be bigger than the sum of their parts, and it's going to turn into something really fun and interesting. And then they struggle down the finish line as they lack control over the pace of matches. And despite, again, these individual bright spots, I fear that they're on their way to another season of frustrations. I really want them to turn it around after the break. Houston, as I mentioned, has to kind of be Utah's alarm bell. We talked about them at the beginning of the season, what they were doing well, right? Full team defending with that safety net. It's great when it's working, but it's really hard to maintain. And negative results can compound when you need a whole team committed to covering maybe weaknesses in your roster. Bay FC has had some trouble making any serious inroads despite picking up Claire Hutton in the offseason with a brand new coaching staff. Chicago, as we saw, just began the road to maybe improving after firing their general manager. Seattle's kind of stuck in this quagmire. It's muddy down in the standings right now. And that has become as consistent for the NWSL as anything. And so my hope is that if we're going to really have some fun in the second half of this season, one of these teams got to step up. We need a dark horse. We need a turnaround. We need that kind of thing where you slip into that quarterfinal and cause a ruckus, because that's the NWSL that I know and love. And to end maybe on a positive note and to be like, hey, we're tracking this, because I think we've been tracking this all year. The one team that I think could do that is Denver. Denver ain't bad. They're not bad, and they're getting better. And we thought this might be the case, but they sit right outside the playoff picture in 9th place, and they're continuing to improve. They're starting to create some more results here. They're again, small margin soccer, but they're getting there. And they've got Lindsay Heaps officially on the way now, and she's got now this big long break to get acclimated with the team and hit the ground running in July. I'm excited to see if they can make some noise in the playoff race. So these are my surprises. I've really been enjoying this season so far. I think this is a good example of how this size of a league is perfect. It widens things up. It opens things up. You're going to have some good teams, some bad teams. People are scoring a lot of goals. You've got some roster shakeups. This is like the fun part of an expansion year. And all you want them to do is to be able to stick the landing and hopefully continue to create this level of parity as the league continues to expand. The NWSL will be off until 4th of July weekend for regular season play. We've got a week of U.S. games coming up. We're going to be covering that on the show. And then we're going to have the NWSL Challenge Cup between Gotham and Kansas City at the end of the month, and I really hope I see you there.